$130,000. That is a new reality for every single condo unit built in Toronto. It's a staggering figure, but here's the catch. That number covers government fees alone. It doesn't include the concrete, the glass, the labor, or the land. According to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's 2025 report, Toronto now holds the top spot in the country for development charges. To put the impact into perspective, look at the first quarter of 2025. Only 497 condo units broke ground across the entire city. That is 88% below the 10-year average and marks the lowest quarterly figure since 1996. This is the story of how $130,000 in fees transformed Toronto's market. Builders who once launched dozens of projects are now canceling them. The math that worked just a few years ago simply no longer adds up. By the end of this analysis, you will understand exactly what this means for anyone watching the Toronto real estate market today. First, we have to look at where this money actually goes. Buying a brand new condo means paying for much more than a nice view. Development charges for a one-bedroom unit hit roughly $52,000, while two-bedroom units face over $80,000. These fees fund the infrastructure a growing city needs: roads, transit parks, and libraries. But that is just the starting point. Education development charges, community benefit charges, parkland dedication fees, and building permits pile on top. When the CMHC added it all together for their 2025 report, the average Toronto condo carried exactly $130,200 in development charges. This creates a completely different economic reality for Toronto compared to the rest of Canada. To understand how extreme Toronto's situation has become, you have to look at the rest of the country. Vancouver sits at similar levels, but other major cities aren't even in the same conversation. Edmonton charges around $6,500 per unit. Montreal ranges between $8,000 and $30,000. This means Toronto charges 15 to 20 times more than Edmonton for the exact same type of development. The Building Industry and Land Development Association, known as BILD, uncovered a striking trend. Between 2022 and 2024, municipal fees jumped by $32,000 per high-rise unit. That's a massive increase in just 24 months. So where's this money going? Transit infrastructure takes the biggest slice at 41.7% of the total. A single one-bedroom condo contributes nearly $22,000 toward transit and another $11,000 toward roads. While the logic of growth pays for growth sounds straightforward, the pace of increase has become unsustainable. The Fraser Institute found that development charges in Toronto have climbed by 933% since 2009. 15 years ago, a one-bedroom condo faced about $5,000 in charges. Today, that same unit carries over $52,000. June 2024 was a major turning point. A new provincial regulation eliminated the mandatory 5-year phase-in period for fee increases. This allowed charges that would have risen gradually to jump overnight. On June 6, 2024, development charges spiked 18% in a single day. When you combine that with earlier increases, fees rose 42% in under 1 year. For builders who structure their project around old cost assumptions, the economics were destroyed instantly. When the math stops working, the cranes stop moving. This brings us to a critical look at the numbers versus the narrative. Numbers reveal what is actually happening versus what people claim is happening. BILD analyzed a typical 500-square-foot Toronto condo to compare the economics of 2014 versus 2024. In 2014, municipal fees represented about 8% of total project costs. By 2024, that share jumped to 13%. While a 5 percentage point increase might sound small, it translates to a 238% increase in municipal fees per unit over a decade. The impact on builder margins is even more devastating. Profit per unit has dropped from $29,000 down to just over $9,500, a 67% decline. Consider the risk involved. A builder spends years purchasing land, securing approvals, and managing construction. At the end of that process, a profit of $9,500 per unit barely covers the unexpected costs that occur in every major project. As one executive put it, they simply cannot sell for the price homeowners want to buy at. The gap between buyer affordability and builder necessity has become a canyon. This is reflected clearly in the sales data. Only 4,590 presale condo units were sold in Toronto during 2024. This is the lowest total since 1996 and a 64% drop from 2023. Even as the city adds thousands of new residents, condo sales have fallen to levels not seen in nearly 30 years. But sales are only half the story. 18 buildings were canceled in late 2024 and early 2025, representing 4,000 units that will never exist. Another 20 projects are in receivership or on hold. Currently, 14,000 condo units sit frozen in the pipeline, not canceled but not moving. They are simply waiting for an economic reality that doesn't exist yet. The first quarter of 2025 delivered the clearest signal yet of a market in crisis. With construction starts 88% below the 10-year average, the industry is essentially at a standstill. March 2025 housing starts were 65% lower than the previous year. What this means depends on where you stand. A potential buyer might see an opportunity in less competition or better builder incentives. However, a builder sees land purchased years ago that now faces fees which didn't exist during the planning phase. Current condo owners face a mixed reality. Less supply might support their property values, but a market where construction has stopped is not a healthy environment for anyone. The Canadian Home Builders Association recently ranked municipalities based on factors affecting housing supply. All 10 of the bottom-ranked cities were located in either the Greater Toronto Area or Metro Vancouver. These high-fee locations show the most challenging conditions for new construction in the country. Mike Moffat of the Missing Middle Initiative compared Toronto directly to Montreal. He found that Toronto's development charges are 15 to 16 times higher for high-rise buildings. This has a direct impact on affordability. In Montreal, only 20% of owner households spend more than 30% of their income on housing. In Toronto, that figure is 27%. That 7% gap represents hundreds of thousands of families facing a much tougher financial reality. While Toronto struggles with massive high-rises and high fees, Montreal has preserved more missing middle housing, mid-sized buildings that create diversity in established neighborhoods. This contrast highlights that Toronto's current path isn't the only way to manage a city, but it is certainly one of the most expensive. By April 2025, the pressure became too great for the city to ignore. Toronto introduced a motion to freeze development charges at current levels, blocking further annual increases until a comprehensive review is finished. This freeze is expected to cost the city $12 million in projected revenue. However, city officials admit the limitations. Without support from other levels of government, they can only do so much while still trying to fund the infrastructure a growing community requires. In June 2025, provincial legislation changed the timing of these payments. Instead of paying at the building permit stage, builders of non-rental residential projects can now defer payment until occupancy. While this shifts approximately $1.9 billion in cash flow over 10 years, the industry notes a fundamental flaw. The total amount stays exactly the same. A freeze at $130,000 still leaves a massive burden on the books, and a deferral just means the bill comes due later. The underlying economics remain unchanged. This leads to the most important question: who actually pays these fees? A 2025 study by the CMHC concluded that new home buyers usually absorb a development charge. When fees go up, the price of the home goes up, often by even more than the fee itself. This happens because fees add risk to a project, and risk requires compensation, which is built into the final price. Even existing homeowners are affected. When new construction becomes more expensive, existing homes become more attractive by comparison, pushing prices up across the entire market. Whether you are buying a brand new unit or a 20-year-old resale, these development charges are baked into the price you pay. As we look at the data from 2025, the picture is clear. Toronto is at a crossroads. A builder could construct the exact same condo unit in Edmonton for $120,000 less in government fees. That isn't an opinion. It is simple arithmetic that shapes every decision in the market. The Ontario Home Builders Association has called for a modernization of the 35-year-old system, arguing that the current methodology is a primary driver of housing costs. Until that modernization happens, we are in a period of forced recalibration. Many planned projects simply cannot move forward at current fee levels. The ones that do must be priced to cover that $130,000 burden, and buyers must be both willing and able to qualify for those higher prices. The math creates constraints that no one can escape. Builders cannot sell below cost indefinitely, and buyers cannot pay more than they can afford. The gap between these two realities is why new supply has plummeted. Some observers see this as a temporary search for a new equilibrium. Others see a structural failure that will take years to resolve. What is certain is that the Toronto condo market of 2025 is fundamentally different from the market of just 3 years ago. With construction starts down 88% and $130,000 in fees attached to every unit, the story of Toronto real estate is now a story of survival. Understanding how these costs flow through the market is essential for anyone looking to buy or sell. The $130,000 fee is a new baseline, and the market is still figuring out how to live with it. As these patterns appear across Canada, from Toronto to Surrey, the national housing conversation is shifting from how much we build to how much can we afford to charge.